Okay, good morning to everyone, and welcome to our 10 a.m. service. Okay, so this is the last part of our excess baggage prequel because we are going to go into the main series starting next month. So let's continue to pray because our material is in printing. So we hope to have the first batch of books available by this Sunday. So let's continue to pray because our team have given much effort into the editing, layouting, and communicating with the printing press. So thank God for all the favor. Okay, so um, we hope to have the book available next week as we continue to grow together and learn more about what is in the heart of God. And so we'll be focusing on the book of Proverbs, where it talks about the seven detestable sin in the eyes of God. And probably next year, we're going to talk about the seven deadly sin. Okay, sa mga nakatanaw sang movie nga Shazam, okay, you have the idea that the seven deadly sin was mentioned. But we're going to look at the seven detestable sin because this is listed in the book of Proverbs. Okay, so before I go into the word, I would like to show you a clip. And so please focus your eyes on the screen.
Good boy.
Okay, so some of you are wondering what this clip is. It's not a fire thing. There's no danger. There's no earthquake, but actually it was the opening of Avengers in Singapore. Okay, kabalo ko nga medyo grabe trending sa mga Avenger, no? I don't know how many of you have already watched Avengers. Can I see your hand? How many of you have not yet watched? How many of you are planning to watch? Okay. Okay, we'll see what happened. Okay, so we'd like to go back to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. The Bible says, therefore we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, and consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So we began the prequel series with this verse, and would like to go back to this verse in order to wrap up the things that we have learned so far in the excess baggage prequel. And so that's why we're calling this series, wrap-up series as Endgame. Okay, because it is the end. So would like to learn a number of things that we have seen from the movie. Hopefully, hindi ka mo ma-spoil. And that's why I want you to know that there's a spoiler alert in the message this morning. Okay? But I hope that I'm going to make the spoilers so minimal that it will not affect you enjoying the movie itself. But there are three things that would like to learn from the movie, which actually we can learn from the book of Hebrews chapter 12. Hambal nato no, ang church is not boring. Do you agree? The church is not boring. That's why I want us to see how relevant our faith is. Okay, in fact, I want you to see that the Christian faith, that the Bible is not only relevant to Christians, but even the world in the marketplace, even the world as they think about life and produce movie, we can see the biblical truth throughout the things that we are experiencing. Why? Because the Bible talks about life. The Bible talks about life, your life, my life, and it talks about a God who cares so much for each one of us. Okay? So first thing that we'd like to learn is go back to the past, not to dwell on it, but to deal with it. There's a difference when you dwell in the past compared to dealing with your past. The problem with most people is that they dwell on the past. Kung mga bata, you dwell on the past, that means you are stuck with what happened in the past. So many times we cannot move ahead, we cannot move forward because we dwell on what happened in the past. That's why the Bible says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that's so easily entangled. Tell the person beside you, throw off. Okay? Now think for a moment. What are the things in your life that you have to throw away? Because if you don't throw it away, you will carry it for the rest of your life. And as long as you're carrying baggages of the past, you are dwelling in the past. Okay, that's why we're talking about excess baggage. Because in our life, there's so many baggages that we carry that we should have already thrown away. Okay, so throw off everything that hinders. And so the Avenger movie actually, the main part of the movie started 5 years later. So you can see that nga may gagwa 5 years later. Okay, because something happened. They tried to fix everything. And at the beginning of the clip, you wonder how come they already won. But actually, they won, but they didn't really win because they cannot do anything about what happened. And so we see this guy, he was struggling because of the many failures that he experienced in the past. And in fact, he was dwelling on the losses and the failures that he experienced. Not only did he lose his mother, he also had to kill and fight his own sister. He broke up with his girlfriend. He lost his hair. He lost his father. He lost his eye. He lost his hammer. He lost his palace. He lost his people. He lost his brother. He lost his friend. So many losses. And that's why you cannot blame him for dwelling in depression and discouragement. And that's why the Thor that you once idolized, that you once saw, you are surprised that he doesn't look that way anymore. Because he was dwelling on the past. But the good thing is, he was reminded of who he was. He was reminded of who he was. And therefore, he took up the courage in order to fight the battle again. Many of us, we failed. We experienced severe failure in the past. Failures that robs us of our confidence. And abi naton daw wala na kita may mahimo. But the more we dwell on the past, we begin to forget that we can still do something today. And so allow yourself to go back to the past, not to dwell on it, but to deal with it. Deal with your failure and tell yourself, your failure do not define you. Your losses do not define you. Okay? The reason why you are still here, despite all the losses that you have experienced and the failures that you have experienced in the past, is because you still have a purpose to fulfill. You still have a life to live. Okay? What is interesting is because in the Infinity War movie, we saw that there was a struggle between Bruce Banner and Hulk. Hulk just refused to come out because he was afraid of Thanos. But something happened in this movie because Bruce Banner was able to merge the two of them. And so now we have an intelligent Hulk. Okay? So kung may spoilers, sorry lang, no? Pero I want you to know that all these are found in the internet. Okay? And so he was able to come to terms with who he was. Now, many of us, we cannot even come to terms with who we are. We allow our struggles, we allow our failures, we allow our sin to overpower us. But we are reminded that our past do not define us. Our past do not define us. But take charge of your life. Surrender it to the Lord and allow God to take charge of it. Because many times we allow others to take charge of our life. We allow our past to dictate our life. We allow others to define who we are. And our confidence is affected because sige ta pamati sa ibang nga tao. Ngang dapat pamatian ta, si God lang gid. Now I want you to know that nobody knows you as much as God knows you. Do you agree? People try to tell you who you are, but they don't know you. They don't know you. Only God knows you. Because God is the one who created you. God made you. In fact, God has a wonderful plan. God has a plan for each one of you. And only God knows what that plan is. And therefore, you have to go to God, seek the Lord, and know His wonderful plan. In the Bible, we learn about Elijah. We learn how successful Elijah was in overpowering the 950 false prophet in a single day. He was able to pray, and fire came from heaven and burned the altar. And the whole land of Israel, the people, turned back to God because they were convinced through the demonstration of God's power that there is only one God, one true God, and it has been their God all along. But then something happened. Jezebel gave a threat to Elijah. In fact, Jezebel sent a messenger to relay the threat to Elijah that by this time tomorrow, I swear that you will die. And immediately Elijah was overpowered by fear. He was overpowered by discouragement. He was overpowered by a sudden surge of depression that he started running away. And sad to say, in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 14 to 18, we read, after the Lord dealt with him, the Lord said to him, go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as a prophet. The last thing that God asked Elijah to do before he was taken away is to anoint all the successors, including the one who will succeed him. I pray that none of us will come to that point that God could not even use us anymore and he has to look for somebody to replace us. It's a great privilege to be used by God. But many times when we allow our failures, our past, our sin to rob us of that confidence, even if the Lord would like to use us, He cannot because of our own limitations. And so it's sad. A great and powerful prophet like Elijah, who did so many miracles, has to come to that point that he has to be replaced because he came to that um, that depth of depression that he could no longer see things clearly. He was telling the Lord, I am the only one left. But the Lord kept on telling him, you are not. You are not. There are 1,000 and even more people, 10,000, who have not bowed down to Baal. You are not alone. Second, it's never too late to change your future today. It's never too late to change your future today. And so when do you change your future? Today, not tomorrow, not next year. Because many people would like to change. The problem is they don't start now. They want to change. And so ang mindset nila, I want to change. I want to change. I'm tired of my life. But they don't do anything today. And so sige lang sila hambal, hasta lang hambal. Kayuhon ko ni kabuhi ko. Makambyo ko, mabaylo ko. Pero saan na masugod? When will it start? You have to make that decision. I will start today. Because if you don't start today, it will never start. If you keep on saying, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that next week, by next week, you'll still be saying the same. I'll do that next week. And next week will lead to next week and next week and next week. And before you know it, you're too old to do anything. And so decide to change today. Because your future does not depend on tomorrow. Your future depends on today. One of the character of the Avenger is Hawkeye. And we saw him taking a different character named Ronin. Actually, the interesting thing about Ronin, because the name refers to a Japanese term, which means masterless samurai. He became a lone warrior. He went out killing criminals whom he feel has no right to survive when half of the world was destroyed. Half of the population was removed. And so he lost his family on the process when Thanos snapped his finger. And that's why he became alone. He became depressed and he started to take on the war against the criminal world. And so in a way, from a hero, he became an anti-hero. He became a murderer. And that's why he knows that. He knows that his life was not going the right direction. But he was taking out his bitterness, his anger upon these people whom he feel doesn't have the right to live. Now, many times we dwell on our anger and bitterness as well. And so we allow our anger and bitterness, we allow our frustration to define what we do today and eventually define who we become tomorrow. But then we have to make that decisive decision. I will not allow these things to define me. I will change. Because, like what the IREV has, they have a slogan, if I change, everything changes. Many times we want people around us to change. Lord, change my brother, change my sister, change my husband, change my wife. Of course, people don't literally mean change the wife. They just want the wife to change in attitude or the husband to change. Kabudlay na kung naglabot ka na sa point nga pray ka na kay God, Lord, change my husband, change my wife. In other words, Lord, bayluan lang ba na ko, bayluwa asawa ko. Budlay na na. Okay, but then, we have to remember, maybe the change will begin when you yourself change. Maybe when you start to show kindness to others, maybe when you start to show compassion to others will begin to change as well. Because many times our mind is so focused on other people. That's why our church desires authenticity. But how can authenticity happen? Not when people are waiting for others to be authentic. Authenticity can only happen when everyone desires to be authentic, desires to be real. The Christian church is known as people nga gabantay sa iban. Okay? But it's time for us to look into our own lives and allow God to change us. Because when change begins in our life, other things around us will begin to change as well. Not all of us have that luxury of experience to go back to time and live out the time that we missed. But each one of us, we need to remember, we have the opportunity to live out the rest of our life the way God wants it to be lived. Because many times we keep on looking at the past. We keep on thinking, I should have done this. How I wish I could have done that. How I wish I could do this. But the past is already in the past. You cannot change the past, but you can change your future. So therefore, change your future today. Change your future today. If you feel that your life is not going the direction that you know you should be going, make that decisive decision and commitment to do something about it today. Okay, many people say, sige lang testingan ko lang ni Anay himuon ko lang ni Anay Testing lang, and before they know it, they're stuck into it. Make that choice today. In Exodus chapter 3, verses 10 to 11, we read about Moses when God came to him. We read about how Moses ran away from Pharaoh because Pharaoh wanted to kill him. Because as he rise up in his identity of being a Jew and wanting to help his fellow Jew, he ended up killing an Egyptian. And when God called him to do the work that God has prepared for him, to help Israel be set free from Egypt, this is what the response of Moses was. Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Who am I? I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I tried helping my people. And the first time I tried, I became a murderer. I became a criminal. I became a runaway." And so he lost his confidence. But you know what? Finally, the Lord convinced him. The Lord convinced him. And it really stretched somehow the patience of God that you can almost hear God saying, just do it. Because he gave so many excuses. But you know what? At the end of Moses' life, this is how he was described in Deuteronomy 34. "Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. Somebody who said, "Who am I?" Somebody who said, I'm a person slow of speech. I don't know how to speak. He became the greatest prophet Israel has ever known. He became somebody that God used to part the Red Sea. God used to send food to Israel, send manna. God used to bring water out of the rock. Many miracles that Moses performed were never performed by anyone else after him. But Moses took the step in order to fulfill God's call in his life. And third, your purpose in life will be your compass for life. Your purpose in life will be your compass for life. 5 years after we saw Stark enjoying his family, he has been blessed with a beautiful daughter. And kung magtanaw ka mo sa sini, malingaw ka mo kay ka-cute gid tuod. Now they chose the perfect person to depict a loving, lovable daughter in order to show how precious Tony Stark had. And so when he was asked to help in this new mission in order to restore what was lost, Tony Stark said no. He now has his family. He is trying to enjoy peace and quiet with his wife. So, so the cost was so great for him to go back and do another mission. But along the way, Tony Stark find himself trying to find ways to make the mission work. And then eventually, he, he said to his wife, "I found it. I sold it." And his wife said, I really could never stop you. This is who you are. Go for it." And so, he went back to the Avengers in order to do that one final mission to restore everything that was lost. He could not run away from who he was. He could not run away from his purpose in life. You know, many times we try, because of frustration and disappointment, we try to forget our call. We try to forget our purpose. But no matter how much we try to look for peace, we can never find peace until we fulfill our purpose in life. You know, we know that the founder of Marvel, Stan Lee, already passed away. But one of the things that moviegoers really anticipate in Marvel movies is when Stan Lee will show up. Now, I've always wondered, nga ang ngalan niya Stan Lee when he is not a Chinese. But actually, his name is Stan Lee, Stanley. And so, Stan Lee is his pen name. And definitely it's not Chinese. But sometimes we would think how sad it is that the climax of the MCU movie, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, Endgame, came up and he is already dead. But then this is one thing that I realized. Before the movie was completed, he already knew it. He already saw it. Because he was the one who conceptualized most of the characters in Marvel. You know, just like Disney, who eventually bought much of Marvel, Disney died without seeing the park completed. And so, on the speech, the person said how tragic it is that Walt Disney is not here today to celebrate with us the opening of the first Disneyland. But the wife of Disney came up and said, "I beg to differ. Before any one of us saw this, he already saw it. He already saw it. You see, many times we lose sight of our purpose. But God has already given us a dream. God has already given us a vision. And until that vision, that dream is realized and fulfilled, we will never be fulfilled in life. So it doesn't matter how much we run away, how much we deny, how much we hide. But when God has a call for our life, when God has a purpose for us to fulfill, we will never be fulfilled in life until we fulfill that call and that purpose. 2 Corinthians 11:23 to 29 said, Paul said, I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, and been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus one. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. Let me ask you, how many of us have experienced that? Sino sa ato nakaagi sa ginagyan niya? That wherever you go, you are in danger. Sometimes God calls us to go to a dangerous place. But Paul, wherever he goes, he is in danger. Sometimes we face a little struggle, a little problem, and we give up. We give up and we turn our back on God's call and God's purpose. But Paul said, this is what he has gone through. He has worked much harder than anyone despite being in prison more frequently than any other person that God has called. He has been flogged more severely than others, of course, next to Jesus. He has been exposed to death again and again. One time in the book of Acts, after preaching, he was stoned. And then after people thought he was dead, his body was dragged outside the city and left there. But the believers gathered around him and prayed for him. And all of a sudden, he came back to life. He stood up. And what would you expect him to do after he rose up? Run away. But the first thing he did after he rose up, he went back to the city. Amo naka-stubborn si Paul. You can imagine when you read the Bible, you have to read between the lines. You have to begin to picture what's happening. You can imagine after being stoned to death, and Paul rising from the dead after he was prayed, his body is filled with bruises. Probably blood was still flowing all around him, and yet he went back to the city. But you know what? I can just imagine the people who saw him, especially those who stoned him. It would have been amazing for them to see a person whom they thought was dead, whom they thought they have stoned to death, walking in front of them alive. Just like Jonah. When Jonah was bit by the fish in Nineveh, don't think that Jonah was still well-dressed, good-looking. He was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. His skin was probably discolored because of the acid of the fish. He was probably covered with seaweed or other stuff. And probably as he was walking, people can smell the stink. But God used that to draw the attention of people. They were amazed at the sight of this man who came out of the sea, and he was not Aquaman. He was just somebody swallowed and who stayed in the fish for 3 days. But when he came to the land, probably people flocked around him and listened to what he was saying. Many times we get discouraged by what we have experienced. We get discouraged by the failures we have gone through. We get discouraged by the people who criticize us. But I want you to understand that everything that you've experienced in the past, when you are able to pull it all together, when you are able to rise up beyond them, will become a powerful testimony. to other people. God can use your past to give hope to another person's future. He can use the things that you went through. Your test will become a testimony. Your mess will become a message. And you know that. Because the Bible says God is able to make all things beautiful in His time. And God is able to turn everything for the good of those who love Him. Don't dwell on your mess. Don't dwell on your failures. Rise above your failure. You know, the enemy would like us to dwell on our past. The enemy would like to us to dwell on our mess. You know why? Because he wants to cripple us. He knows the potential that you have with you. He knows what you are able to do when you fix your eyes on Jesus and when you put your heart to God. But Satan doesn't want that. He wants to keep you stuck in your past so that you become powerless, so that you become intimidated, so you become fearful. You become afraid of what other people will say, how other people will laugh at you. But the moment you rise above your past, you can prove to the enemy that he is powerless over you. You know the best way to get back to the enemy, to get back at the enemy for the things he has done to you in the past, is to make him regret for what he has done. I remember this, a pastor was sharing that one time he was about to speak in a conference when all of a sudden he felt so weak. He felt spiritual attack that nagsugod siya suka. And he know that because of the vomiting and all, he could not preach that evening. And so he already excused himself from the organizer and said, I'm sorry, I want to try, but I cannot. I cannot preach tonight. And the organizer said to him, Pastor, we're sorry. We cannot get anyone else in this short notice. And then they said, you're a man of God. Pray to God. And so he called his family to pray for him. And after 30 minutes, the attack was lifted up and he was able to preach. And when he updated his family what happened, the family told him, you know, Dad, when you were under attack, we decided to do something else. Instead of just some coming before God in 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 fear, in wallowing and things like that, we decided to go out and attack the enemy. We went out to share the gospel, we went out to pray for healing, we went out to make the enemy regret for what he has done for you. You know, many times, amuta na kung gina-atake ta, gakulo ta, kulbaan ta, gapanago ta. Lord, buligi ko, Lord. Lord, help me. But you know what? When the enemy attack you, make him regret for attacking you. Make him regret for attacking you. Because many times, ginapasugot na lang. Kay kulbaan ta kung mag-attack kung mag-counter-attack ta, base mas grabe pag ang pag-attack ya. But you have forgotten, we have forgotten, that the one who is in us is greater than the one who is in the world. The enemy that we are fighting is already defeated. And many times we are afraid of a defeated enemy. We are afraid of an enemy who is powerless because we think he has power over us when we are God's children. And that's why Paul said, yes, I've gone through a lot. But Paul said, I'm here to finish my mission. I'm here to finish my call. And that's why one of the battle cry of the Avengers when they decided to do this mission was at all cost. At all cost. Are we willing to go and do God's work at all costs? Until we have that mindset, whatever it may cost, we will still be drawn by the world. Because it's easy to think that you have so much to lose in this world. when in reality, the world means nothing compared to what we can gain in eternity. And so Satan would like us to think there's so many things in this world that you can enjoy. In fact, sometimes kita mga Christians, we have also succumbed to that lie to run after material blessing, thinking that if we love God, if we serve God, if we follow Him, then all the blessing materially will come into our life. You know, God do bless us, but the Bible talks more of the spiritual blessing than the material blessing. When you read the book of Ephesians, the Bible talks about all heavenly blessing has been given to us. And people read that and think it talks about money, it talks about good health, it talks about new house, it talks about new car, it talks about new cell phone, new. When we have forgotten all of this, no matter how new they are, they will become old. But the spiritual blessing will never grow old because they are treasures that rust cannot that cannot be rusted. They're treasures that moth cannot eat away. And that's why in 2 Timothy 4, to continue, Paul said, I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. Who is weak, and I do not feel weak. Who is led into sin, and I do not inwardly burn. So Paul is telling everyone, I'm not a super apostle. I'm not a super Christian. I'm just like you. If you go through struggle, I also go through struggle. If you feel hunger, I also go through hunger. And Paul is saying, we are the same. But Paul is telling the people, but I have made up my mind to live my life for Jesus. That's why 2 Timothy 4:6-8, Paul said, for I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for His appearing. I pray that one day makambal man tayo kay Paul, no? I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Because most people cannot say that. I'm not sure if I can, but I hope I will. I have finished the race. You know, the confidence to know that you have reached the finish line. Now, some people look back and say, how I wish I have more time. How I wish I could do this. You know, it's the most difficult thing is to be on the deathbed and think that there's still many things that you should have done or things that you should still do. But Paul said, I have done it. I have fought a good fight. I have finished the race. You know, in Jeremiah 45, this is very interesting because this was my devotion. And I've been reading the book of Jeremiah. It's a very heavy book because it talks about God's judgment upon Israel and Jerusalem. And so Jeremiah the prophet was prophesying the, the proclamation of God against Israel. And he was probably one of the few prophets who lived to see the fulfillment of his own prophecy. You know, it's good if your prophecy is wonderful. It's a beautiful ending, and you live to see the promise fulfilled. But what if your prophecy is a prophecy of judgment, and you live to see that judgment happen before your very eyes? And that's exactly Jeremiah. That's why the book that comes after Jeremiah is called Lamentation, because it was a time when Jeremiah was crying over Israel because he saw the destruction of Jerusalem before his eyes. In the original Hebrew Bible, the book of Jeremiah and Lamentation is one book. In our Old Testament, it has been divided so that we can see the timeline. Jeremiah happened before the destruction, Lamentations happened after the destruction. But despite the word lamentation, which comes from the word lament, crying, that's why Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet, we can see some beautiful verses coming out of that. And one of that is, great is thy faithfulness. They are new every morning. So as Jeremiah was crying over the destruction of Israel, he was remembering the promise of God that one day God will restore Israel as a nation. And that's why Jeremiah is able to say, despite the discouraging experience, God's faithfulness is great. It is new every day. He still has faith in the promises of God despite the destruction around him. But here in Jeremiah chapter 45, what is unique is because throughout the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah would be dictating the words of God. And there's a scribe. His name was Baruch, who would write down everything that Jeremiah would say in a scroll. And as Baruch was writing down the words of Jeremiah, all of a sudden, probably at this point, he was shocked because this is what came out of the mouth of Jeremiah. So Jeremiah said this to Baruch. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says to you. God was no longer talking to Israel in general. But all of a sudden, God was speaking specifically to one person, to Baruch. And God was reminding Baruch, you are not just a scribe, you are also my people. I have planned for you. And my plan is not just for you to write down everything that you hear. You are not just a writer, you are a person. And so, this is what God said to him. You said, woe to me, the Lord has added sorrow to my pain. I am worn out and groaning and find no rest. But the Lord has told me to say to you, this is what the Lord said, I will overthrow what I have built and uproot what I have planted throughout the earth. Should you then seek great things for yourself? Do not seek them. For I will bring disaster on all people, declares the Lord. But wherever you go, I will let you escape with your life. Do not run after the things that people are running after. But remember one thing, I will take care of you. I will take care of you. You see, amo na nakita namon in this generation of Christians. This generation of Christians are people in general, of course, not everybody, who follow God because they have something they want. They love God as long as they get what they want. And when things doesn't go their way, and if they don't get what they want, they get discouraged and turn their backs on God. Their love and loyalty to God is not based on who God is, but their love and loyalty to God is based on what God gives them. The question is, nakita sa mga ari diri, what is our love for the Lord? Is it based on what we can get from Him? Or is it based on the fact that He is God and He deserves everything? He deserves everything. You see, Jesus demonstrated His love for us when He died on the cross. When I was in Israel, I got a pamphlet um, from a Muslim pamphlet that tried to explain who Jesus is. And in that pamphlet, they said that Jesus didn't really die, but it was Simon who died on the cross. And that eventually, later on, his followers made up the story. But you know what? The funny thing is, when I was in Israel, there was no question among the Jews that Jesus walked their city. There was no question that a person named Jesus died in their city. The only question in their mind was whether he is the Messiah as the Christian claimed to be or not. You see, Jesus gave his life for us. He went all out. He paid the cost at all cost so that each one of us may experience the love of God. The question is, are we also willing to pay the cost? That's why today in this world where people are saying, follow Jesus, follow God, and you will be blessed. Follow Jesus, follow God, and you will have this thing and that thing, a new house, a new boyfriend, a new tanan nga new. Jesus is saying, if you want to be my disciple, you have to deny yourself and pick up your cross. Only then can you follow me. Only then can you be my disciple. Let us change our mindset. Let us change our perspective. Yes, our life has been filled with baggages. Our life has been filled with so much expectations. And probably we have experienced being disappointed by God. Why? Because our disappointment is not based on God's promises and plans for us. Our disappointment is based on our own wants and our own demands from God. But it's time to change our mindset. He is God. He is God. Let Him be God of your life. Let Him be the God of your life. And tell the Lord, Lord, I surrender my life to you. And like Paul, I know what it means to be in plenty or in need. In times of plenty, I will worship you, I will serve you, I will love you. In times of need, I will worship you, I will serve you, I will love you. Whatever the cost, whatever the situation, whatever the circumstances, I will remain the same before you because you are my God. So let me end with this thought. What is your end game? How will your life end? As we look ahead in our life, ano ay han matabo? Okay, will we see ourselves faithfully loving God, serving God like Paul did? I have fought a good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Or will we see ourselves wondering what we could have done, how we could have lived our life, how we could have lived life much better? The good news is this: you don't have to wait tomorrow. You can change your future today. Just make that decision today. Lord, whatever my failures may be, you have not turned your back on me. No matter how I failed, you have still loved me. No matter how I failed, you've still called me. No matter how I failed, you still desire to use me. Give me a heart, a faith to believe that I am loved by you and that you can do great things through me and in me.